Good day, everybody. I go by the name of Absalom, and today I want to be covering a very strange topic, and a lot of you are going to find it unbelievable, but my hopes, as always, at the end of this video, I hope you leave with some understanding of what's really going on. And this topic is superheroes and the role they play in the Bible. Now, I want to start by saying that all the things and all the superheroes that we see in these movies, these Hollywood movies, all of those ideas came from the Bible. And most movies that we watch, they got the idea from the Bible. And I'm going to prove that right now in this video. Throughout the Bible, there are many scriptures that pointed to man having superhuman strength. Not of their own accord, but from God. We all know about Samson. Samson was one for sure, right? He had superhuman strength. But I'm going to show a few more right now in this video, in this little study. And for that, I'm going to start off with one of the most infamous movies, one of the most popular movies, one of them of our generation, and that's the movie 300. And one surprising fact, actually two surprising facts that I'm going to give you about the movie 300 is that it was made based on a story in the Bible. And the creator, Frank Miller, he actually admitted to that. And the second surprising fact that I want to give is that the characters in 300 were supposed to be black. That's what the director wanted, but they stopped it. They didn't allow it. And what's even more amazing is that before the movie came out, they had a comic book that was released in 1997. So the movie was made based on the comic book, which was based on the Bible. And in the comic book, the characters were all black characters. Yes. And the thing is, okay, let me say, honestly, I believe that the true Hebrews were black. And I believe they hide this from us. I believe that most of the characters we read about in the Bible were black, but they hide that from us. Or what you would call brown skin or whatever. That's what I believe. That's who I believe they were. Now, I'll say this right now on the record, that I don't believe that color is a salvation issue. Let me repeat that. I don't believe that color is a salvation issue. I know there are guys out here that preach that the true Hebrews are black, and they get really adamant about it and passionate about it, and they also preach that salvation is only offered to the children of Israel, to the Hebrews. But I want to say that contrary to their belief, I believe that we and all human beings can receive salvation if we believe on Christ Jesus. And if we believe in His Father, and if we follow His laws, statutes, and commandments, that anybody can receive salvation. So this is not a color issue, but it is an issue of truth. And I truly believe that the people spoken about in the Bible were black characters. Now I'm going to show some pictures. These are pictures actually from the comic book. There you have a guy with locks. They clearly have brown skin. Some more guys with locks with brown skin. Xerxes, he also has brown skin. This is their leader. I can't remember his name, it's crazy. But yeah, that's him as a child when he fought the wolf. But brown skin also. Brown skin. Brown skin, locks. Xerxes again, brown skin. You can clearly see that that's a black guy. Yeah, again. And you can look this up for yourself. the leader, clearly brown skin guy, black guy. But yeah, like I said, it's not a salvation issue. But I want to show you proof of the battle of 300 and where he got the inspiration for the movie from. And for that, I'm going to go to Judges chapter 7, verse 12. And no, I'm going to stop at verse 1. And this gives a brief understanding of what took place and how it took place and how it came to be 300 men fighting with Gideon. Alright. Then Jerubbaal, who is Gideon, and all the people that were with him rose up early and pitched beside the well of Harod, so that the host of the Midianites were on the north side of them by the hill of Moreh in the valley. And the Lord said unto Gideon, the people that are with thee are too many for me to give to the Midianites into their hands, lest Israel vaunt themselves against me, saying, mine own hand hath saved me. So that's God speaking to Gideon, right? And he's telling Gideon, this is hilarious, he's telling Gideon that, hey, you have too much men with you. You know, I don't want you to go and defeat them with all those men. You need less men. Because if they defeat them with all those men, they feel like, hey, we defeated them on our own. But no, God had a plan. God wanted to show them that, hey, we can defeat all of y'all with way less men than you have. So let me continue. Verse 3. Now therefore go to proclaim in the ears of the people, saying, whosoever is fearful and afraid, let him return and depart early from Mount Gilead. And there returned of the people 20 and 2,000, and there remained 10,000. Okay, so it's cut down from 22,000 to 10,000. Verse 4. And the Lord said unto Gideon, the people are yet too many. Bring them down unto the water, and I will try them for thee there. And it shall be, that of whom I say unto thee, this shall go with thee, the same shall go with thee. And of whomsoever I say unto thee, this shall not go with thee, the same shall not go. So he brought them down, the people, unto the water. And the Lord said unto Gideon, every one that lappeth of the water with his tongue, as a dog lappeth, him shalt thou set by himself. Likewise every one that boweth down upon his knee to drink. And the number of them that lapped, putting their hand to their mouth, were 300 men. And the number of them that lapped, putting their hand to their mouth, were 300 men. But the rest of the people bowed down upon their knees to drink water. And the Lord said unto Gideon, by the 300 men that lapped will I save you, and deliver the Midianites into thine hand, and let all the other people go, every man unto his place. So the people took victuals in their hand, and their trumpets, and he sent all the rest of Israel, every man unto his tent, and retained those 300 men, and the host of Midian, and beneath him in the valley, was beneath him in the valley. And it came to pass the same night, the Lord said unto him, arise, get ye down unto the host, for I have delivered into thine hand. But if thou fear to go down, go thou with Purah thy servant down to the host, and thou shalt hear what they say, and afterward shall thine hands be strengthened to go down unto the host. Then went he down unto Purah his servant, unto the outside of the armed men that were in the host. And the Midianites and the Amalekites and all the children of Esau lay along in the valley like grasshoppers for multitude. And their camels were without number, as the sand by the seaside for multitude. So yeah, this gives a clear description of what happened. God cut the army down from 22,000 men to 300 men to prove a point. And they also came back and said that how they couldn't number the men that were with the enemies. and they were like the sand of the sea. So yeah, that right there proves that he got the idea for that from the Bible. But anyway, I just want to go through some quick scriptures, and then because I want to leave you guys with a chapter from the book of Joshua. I'm going to play for you guys so you can see how strong and powerful these men were with the power of God. But before I go there, let me bring some scriptures up from the Bible right quick to further strengthen my argument. So I'm going to go to 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 44. Okay, so what's happening right now is the prophet Elijah, he was involved with I guess you can say a little contest with the magicians of Ahab, and they both challenged each other to make a burnt offering, to make an offering burn without fire from heaven, just to let it come down from heaven. But when the magicians of Ahab tried it, it didn't happen. But Elijah did it, with the power of God, because God was with him. And they was actually in the middle of a drought that Elijah caused to happen by God upon the land. And Elijah was trying to convince them that the power of God was all powerful. So they made the drought end, and this is what happened when the rain was about to come on the land. And it came to pass at the seventh time that he said, Behold, there riseth a little cloud out of the sea, like a man's hand. And he said, Go up, say unto Ahab, Prepare thy chariot, and get thee down, that the rain stop thee not. And it came to pass in the meanwhile that the heaven was black with clouds and wind, and there was a great rain. And Ahab rode and went to Jezreel. And the hand of the Lord was upon Elijah, and he girded up his loins and ran before Ahab to the entrance of Jezreel. Let me repeat that. Verse 46. And the hand of the Lord was on Elijah, and he girded up his loins and ran before Ahab to the entrance of Jezreel. So yeah, that's the example of flash right there. He outran chariots, he outran horses. He outran them to the entrance of Jezreel, and he beat them there through the power of God. Alright, let me bring up another one. Psalms chapter 18, verse 29. Okay, this is David giving praise to God, right? And I want you to notice what he says while he gives praise to God. Okay, verse 29. For by thee I have run through a troop, and by my God I have leaped over a wall. As for God, his way is perfect. The word of the Lord is tried. He is a buckler to all those that trust in him. But yeah, right there he said he have ran through a troop, and he had leaped over a wall. Right? Verse 31. For who is God save the Lord? Or who is a rock save our God? It is God that girded me with strength, and maketh my way perfect. He maketh my feet like hinds' feet. He setteth me upon high places, my high places. He teacheth my hands to war, so that a bow of steel is broken by mine arms. So that a bow of steel is broken by mine arms. So yeah, these guys were invincible with the power of God. Because I don't know if a lot of you know what happened with David. David defeated all of his enemies. Thousands, millions and millions of people that came up against him. He defeated them from round about. And the children of Israel were way less than them. And they were only capable of doing that through the power of God. So these guys were basically superheroes. I'm going to bring up one more. Yeah, I'm going to bring up one more. And for that, I'm going to go to Judges 29. I'm sorry, Judges 11, verse 29 to 33. Okay, so this is Jephthah, right? And with Jephthah, he was the leader at the time, right? And he was able to go to war with the children of Ammon, right? But he was trying to reason before he went to war. But they didn't listen to the words of reasoning. So, this is what happened after that. Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon Jephthah, and he passed over Gilead and Manasseh, and passed over Mespah of Gilead. And from Mespah of Gilead, he passed over the children of Ammon, unto the children of Ammon. And Jephthah vowed a vow unto the Lord, and said, If thou shalt without fail deliver the children of Ammon into mine hands, then it shall be, whatsoever cometh forth of the doors of my house to meet me, when I return in peace from the children of Ammon, shall surely be the Lord's, and I will offer it a burnt offering. So Jephthah passed over unto the children of Ammon to fight against them, and the Lord delivered them into his hands, and he smote them from Ariel, even till thou come to Meneth, even 20 cities, unto the plain of the vineyards, with a very great slaughter. Thus the children of Ammon was subdued before the children of Israel. But what I want y'all to really look at is how they say he passed over them after the Spirit of the Lord came upon him. Which means, which I interpret, which I actually believe is true, he flew. He flew over these cities, and by himself, the Lord delivered them to him. 20 cities he destroyed. Okay, so that's an example of flying. So we already got flying, we got superhuman strength, and we got the power of speed. From the Bible, we got all these from the Bible so far. All these superhero powers that we see in the movies. But I want to leave you guys with a story that happened in the book of Joshua. And this story is based on something that happened in the Bible as well. And this is when Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, the sister of the 12 tribes of Israel, she was raped. And what happened is Simeon and Levi, they went and destroyed, just those two, they destroyed a whole city. Right? And then sometime after that, they destroyed the city by themselves, And then sometime after that, all the other cities, they came against the children of Jacob, the 12 tribes of Israel. And I'm going to leave you guys with this right here to listen to. And it's crazy. It's unbelievable. And you can see superhuman strength all through this chapter. And like I said, all the ideas they put in these movies, most of those things they get from the Bible. It's not original. The leader of this world, they know the Bible, they know what's going on, and they try to keep it from us, like I always say. But I want you guys to look at this right now, to listen to it carefully, and see what's actually going on, and what's actually being said. And like always, I hope you guys have a blessed day. I hope you be blessed. Continue to walk with Christ Jesus. Continue to work and live in all righteousness, and believe in our Father, Yahweh, the God of the creator of the heavens and the earth, whom by his power all things is possible. So yeah, you guys be blessed and take care, and I'm going to leave this for you to listen to.
And in the 105th year of the life of Jacob, that is the 9th year of Jacob's dwelling with his children in the land of Canaan, he came from Paddan Aram. And in those days Jacob journeyed with his children from Hebron, and they went and returned to the city of Shechem, they and all belonging to them, and they dwelt there. For the children of Jacob obtained good and fat pasture land for their cattle in the city of Shechem, the city of Shechem having then been rebuilt, and there were in it about 300 men and women. And Jacob and his children and all belonging to him dwelt in the part of the field which Jacob had bought from Hamor, the father of Shechem, when he came from Paddan Aram before Simeon and Levi had smitten the city. And all those kings of the Canaanites and Amorites that surrounded the city of Shechem heard that the sons of Jacob had again come to Shechem and dwelt there. And they said, Shall the sons of Jacob the Hebrew again come to the city and dwell therein, after that they have smitten its inhabitants and driven them out? Shall they now return and also drive out those who are dwelling in the city, or slay them? And all the kings of Canaan again assembled, and they came together to make war with Jacob and his sons. And Jashub, king of Tapnach, sent also to all his neighboring kings, to Elan, king of Gash, and to Ihure, king of Shiloh, and to Parathon, king of Shazar, and to Susi, king of Sarton, and to Laban, king of Bethoran, and to Shabar, king of Othnemah, saying, Come up to me and assist me, and let us smite Jacob the Hebrew and his sons, and all belonging to him, for they are again come to Shechem to possess it, and to slay its inhabitants as before. And all these kings assembled together and came with all their camps, a people exceedingly plentiful like the sand upon the seashore, and they were all opposite to Tapnach. And Jashub, king of Tapnach, went forth to them with all his army, and he encamped with them opposite to Tapnach without the city, and all these kings they divided into 7 divisions, being 7 camps against the sons of Jacob. And they sent a declaration to Jacob and his sons, saying, Come you all forth to us, that we may have an interview together in the plain, and revenge the cause of the men of Shechem, whom you slew in their city. And you will now again return to the city of Shechem and dwell therein, and slay its inhabitants as before. And the sons of Jacob heard this, and their anger was kindled exceedingly at the words of the kings of Canaan. And 10 of the sons of Jacob hastened and rose up, and each of them girt on his weapons of war. And there were 102 of their servants with them equipped in battle array. And all these men, the sons of Jacob, with their servants, went toward these kings, and Jacob their father was with them. And they all stood upon the heap of Shechem. And Jacob prayed to the Lord for his sons, and he spread forth his hands to the Lord. And he said, O God, thou art an almighty God. Thou art our Father. Thou didst form us, and we are the works of thine hands. I pray thee, deliver my sons through thy mercy from the hand of their enemies, who are this day coming to fight with them, and save them from their hand, for in thy hand is power and might, to save the few from the many. And give unto my sons thy servants strength of heart, and might to fight with their enemies, to subdue them and make their enemies fall before them. And let not my sons and their servants die through the hands of the children of Canaan. But if it seemeth good in thine eyes to take away the lives of my sons and their servants, take them in thy great mercy through the hand of thy ministers, that they may not perish this day by the hands of the kings of the Amorites. And when Jacob ceased praying to the Lord, the earth shook from its place, and the sun darkened, and all these kings were terrified, and a great consternation seized them. And the Lord hearkened to the prayer of Jacob, and the Lord impressed the hearts of all the kings and their hosts with the terror and awe of the sons of Jacob. For the Lord caused them to hear the voice of chariots, and the voice of mighty horses from the sons of Jacob, and the voice of a great army accompanying them. And these kings were seized with great terror at the sons of Jacob, and whilst they were standing in their quarters, behold, the sons of Jacob advanced upon them, with 112 men, with a great and tremendous shouting. And when the kings saw the sons of Jacob advancing toward them, they were still more panic-struck, and they were inclined to retreat from before the sons of Jacob as at first, and not to fight with them. But they did not retreat, saying, "It would be a disgrace to us thus twice to retreat from before the Hebrews." And the sons of Jacob came near and advanced against all these kings and their armies, and they saw, and behold, it was a very mighty people, numerous as the sand of the sea. And the sons of Jacob called unto the Lord and said, "Help us, O Lord, help us, and answer us, for we trust in thee. And let us not die by the hands of these uncircumcised men, who this day have come against us." And the sons of Jacob girt on their weapons of war, and they took in their hands each man his shield and his javelin, and they approached to battle. And Judah the son of Jacob ran first before his brethren, and 10 of his servants with him, and he went toward these kings. And Jashub, king of Tapnach, also came forth first with his army before Judah. And Judah saw Jashub and his army coming toward him, and Judah's wrath was kindled, and his anger burned within him, and he approached to battle, in which Judah ventured his life. And Jashub and all his army were advancing toward Judah, and he was riding upon a very strong and powerful horse. And Jashub was a very valiant man, and covered with iron and brass from head to foot. And whilst he was upon the horse, he shot arrows with both hands, from before and behind, as was his manner in all battles, and he never missed the place to which he aimed his arrows. And when Jashub came to fight with Judah, and was darting many arrows against Judah, the Lord bound the hands of Jashub, and all the arrows that he shot rebounded upon his own men. And notwithstanding this, Jashub kept advancing toward Judah, to challenge him with the arrows, but the distance between them was about 30 cubits. And when Judah saw Jashub darting forth his arrows against him, he ran to him with his wrath-excited might. And Judah took up a large stone from the ground, and its weight was 60 shekels. And Judah ran toward Jashub, and with the stone struck him on his shield, that Jashub was stunned with the blow, and fell off from his horse to the ground. And the shield burst asunder out of the hand of Jashub, and through the force of the blow sprang to the distance of about 15 cubits, and the shield fell before the second camp. And the kings that came with Jashub saw at a distance the strength of Judah, the sons of Jacob, and what he had done to Jashub, and they were terribly afraid of Judah. And they assembled near Jashub's camp, seeing his confusion, and Judah drew his sword and smote 42 men of the camp of Jashub. And the whole of Jashub's camp fled before Judah, and no man stood against him. And they left Jashub and fled from him, and Jashub was still prostrate upon the ground. And Jashub, seeing that all the men of his camp had fled from him, hastened and rose up with terror against Judah, and stood upon his legs opposite Judah. And Jashub had a single combat with Judah, placing shield toward shield, and Jashub's men all fled, for they were greatly afraid of Judah. And Jashub took his spear in his hand to strike Judah upon his head, but Judah had quickly placed his shield to his head against Jashub's spear, so that the shield of Judah received the blow from Jashub's spear, and the shield was split in two. And when Judah saw that his shield was split, he hastily drew his sword and smote Jashub at his ankles, and cut off his feet, that Jashub fell upon the ground, and the spear fell from his hand. And Judah hastily picked up Jashub's spear, with which he severed his head, and cast it next to his feet. And when the sons of Jacob saw what Judah had done to Jashub, they all ran into the ranks of the other kings, and the sons of Jacob fought with the army of Jashub, and the armies of all the kings that were there. And the sons of Jacob caused 15,000 of their men to fall, and they smote at them as if smiting with the gourds, and the rest fled for their lives. And Judah was still standing by the body of Jashub, and stripped Jashub of his coat of mail. And Judah also took off the iron and brass that was about Jashub, and behold, 9 men of the captains of Jashub came alone to fight against Judah. And Judah hastened and took up a stone from the ground, and with it smote one of them upon the head, and his skull was fractured, and the body also fell from the horse to the ground. And the 8 captains that remained, seeing the strength of Judah, were greatly afraid, and they fled. And Judah with his 10 men pursued them, and they overtook them and slew them. And the sons of Jacob were still smiting the armies of the kings, and they slew many of them. But those kings daringly kept their stand with their captains, and did not retreat from their places. And they exclaimed against those of their armies that fled from before the sons of Jacob. But none would listen to them, for they were afraid of their lives lest they should die. And all the sons of Jacob, after having smitten the armies of the kings, returned and came before Judah, and Judah was still slaying the 8 captains of Jashub, and stripping off their garments. And Levi saw Elon, king of Gash, advancing toward him with his 14 captains to smite him. But Levi did not know it for certain. And Elon with his captains approached nearer, and Levi looked back and saw that battle was given him in the rear. And Levi ran with 12 of his servants, and they went and slew Elon and his captains with the edge of the sword. Chapter 38. And Ahuri, king of Shiloh, came up to assist Elon, and he approached Jacob. When Jacob drew his bow that was in his hand, and with an arrow struck Ahuri, which caused his death. And when Ahuri, king of Shiloh, was dead, the 4 remaining kings fled from their station with the rest of the captains, and they endeavored to retreat, saying, "We have no more strength with the Hebrews after their having killed the 3 kings and their captains who were more powerful than we are." And when the sons of Jacob saw that the remaining kings had removed from their station, they pursued them, and Jacob also came from the heap of Shechem from the place where he was standing. And they went after the kings, and they approached them with their servants. And the kings and the captains with the rest of their armies, seeing that the sons of Jacob approached them, were afraid of their lives and fled till they reached the city of Shazar. And the sons of Jacob pursued them to the gate of the city of Shazar, and they smote a great smiting amongst the kings and their armies, about 4,000 men. And whilst they were smiting the army of the kings, Jacob was occupied with his bow, confining himself to smiting the kings, and he slew them all. And he slew Parathon, king of Shazar, at the gate of the city of Shazar, and he afterward smote Susi, king of Sarton, and Laban, king of Bethchorin, and Shabar, king of Machnema. And he slew them all with arrows, an arrow to each of them, and they died. And the sons of Jacob, seeing that all the kings were dead, and that they were broken up and retreating, continued to carry on the battle with the armies of the kings opposite the gate of Shazar, and they still smote about 400 of their men. And 3 men of the servants of Jacob fell in that battle, and when Judah saw that 3 of his servants had died, it grieved him greatly, and his anger burned within him against the Amorites. And all the men that remained of the armies of the kings were greatly afraid of their lives, and they ran and broke the gate of the walls of the city of Shazar, and they all entered the city for safety. And they concealed themselves in the midst of the city of Shazar, for the city of Shazar was very large and extensive. And when all these armies had entered the city, the sons of Jacob ran after them to the city. And 4 mighty men, experienced in battle, went forth from the city and stood against the entrance of the city, with drawn swords and spears in their hands. And they placed themselves opposite the sons of Jacob, and would not suffer them to enter the city. And Naphtali ran and came between them, and with his sword smote 2 of them, and cut off their heads at one stroke. And he turned to the other 2, and beheld they had fled, and he pursued them and overtook them, smote them, and slew them. And the sons of Jacob came to the city, and saw, and behold, there was another wall to the city, and they sought for the gate of the wall, and could not find it. And Judah sprang upon the top of the wall, and Simeon and Levi followed him, and they all 3 descended from the wall into the city. And Simeon and Levi slew all the men who ran for safety into the city, and also the inhabitants of the city with their wives and little ones. They slew with the edge of the sword, and the cries of the city ascended up to heaven. And Dan and Naphtali sprang upon the wall to see what caused the noise of lamentations, for the sons of Jacob felt anxious about their brothers. And they heard the inhabitants of the city speaking with weeping and supplications, saying, "Take all that we possess in the city and go away, only do not put us to death." And when Judah, Simeon, and Levi had ceased smiting the inhabitants of the city, they ascended the wall, and called to Dan and Naphtali, who were upon the wall, and to the rest of their brothers, and Simeon and Levi informed them of the entrance into the city. And all the sons of Jacob came to fetch the spoil. And the sons of Jacob took the spoil of the city of Shazar, the flocks and herds and the property, and they took all that could be captured, and went away that day from the city. And on the next day the sons of Jacob went to Sarton. for they heard that the men of Sarton who had remained in the city were assembling to fight with them, for having slain their king, and Sarton was a very high and fortified city, and it had a deep rampart surrounding the city. And the pillar of the rampart was about 50 cubits, and its breadth 40 cubits, and there was no place for a man to enter the city on account of the rampart. And the sons of Jacob saw the rampart of the city, and they sought an entrance in it, but could not find it. For the entrance to the city was at the rear, and every man that wished to come into the city came by that road and went round the whole city, and he afterward entered the city. And the sons of Jacob, seeing they could not find the way into the city, their anger was kindled greatly, and the inhabitants of the city, seeing that the sons of Jacob were coming to them, were greatly afraid of them, for they had heard of their strength and what they had done in Shazar. And the inhabitants of the city of Sarton could not go out toward the sons of Jacob after having assembled in the city to fight against them, lest they might thereby get into the city. But when they saw that they were coming toward them, they were greatly afraid of them, for they had heard of their strength and what they had done to Shazar. So the inhabitants of Sarton speedily took away the bridge of the road of the city from its place before the sons of Jacob came, and they brought it into the city. And the sons of Jacob came and sought the way into the city and could not find it, and the inhabitants of the city went up to the top of the wall, and saw, and behold, the sons of Jacob were seeking an entrance into the city. And the inhabitants of the city reproached the sons of Jacob from the top of the wall, and they cursed them, and the sons of Jacob heard the reproaches, and they were greatly incensed, and their anger burned within them. And the sons of Jacob were provoked at them, and they all rose and sprang over the rampart with the force of their strength, and through their might passed the 40 cubits breadth of the rampart. And when they had passed the rampart, they stood under the wall of the city, and they found all the gates of the city enclosed with iron doors. And the sons of Jacob came near to break open the doors of the gates of the city, and the inhabitants did not let them, for from the top of the wall they were casting stones and arrows upon them. And the number of the people that were upon the wall was about 400 men, and when the sons of Jacob saw that the men of the city would not let them open the gates of the city, they sprang and ascended to the top of the wall. And Judah went up first to the east part of the city, and Gad and Asher went up after him to the west corner of the city, and Simeon and Levi to the north, and Dan and Reuben to the south. And the men who were on the top of the wall, the inhabitants of the city, seeing that the sons of Jacob were coming up to them, they all fled from the wall, descended into the city, and concealed themselves in the midst of the city. And Issachar and Naphtali, that remained under the wall, approached and broke the gates of the city, and kindled a fire at the gates of the city, that the iron melted. And all the sons of Jacob came into the city, they and all their men, and they fought with the inhabitants of the city of Sarton, and smote them with the edge of the sword, and no man stood up before them. And about 200 men fled from the city, and they all went and hid themselves in a certain tower in the city. And Judah pursued them to the tower, and he broke down the tower, which fell upon the men, and they all died. And the sons of Jacob went up the road of the roof of that tower, and they saw, and behold, there was another strong and high tower, at a distance in the city, and the top of it reached to heaven. And the sons of Jacob hastened and descended, and went with all their men to that tower, and found it filled with about 300 men, women, and little ones. And the sons of Jacob smote a great smiting amongst those men in the tower, and they ran away and fled from them. And Simeon and Levi pursued them, when 12 mighty and valiant men came out to them from the place where they had concealed themselves. And those 12 men maintained a strong battle against Simeon and Levi. And Simeon and Levi could not prevail over them. And those valiant men broke the shields of Simeon and Levi, and one of them struck at Levi's head with his sword. When Levi hastily placed his hand to his head, for he was afraid of the sword, and the sword struck Levi's hand, and it wanted but little to the hand of Levi being cut off. And Levi seized the sword of the valiant man in his hand, and took it forcibly from the man, and with it he struck at the head of the powerful man, and he severed his head. And 11 men approached to fight with Levi, for they saw that one of them was killed. And the sons of Jacob fought, but the sons of Jacob could not prevail over them, for those men were very powerful. And the sons of Jacob, seeing that they could not prevail over them, Simeon gave a loud and tremendous shriek, and the 11 powerful men were stunned at the voice of Simeon's shrieking. And Judah at a distance knew the voice of Simeon's shouting, and Naphtali and Judah ran with their shields to Simeon and Levi, and found them fighting with those powerful men, unable to prevail over them as their shields were broken. And Naphtali saw that the shields of Simeon and Levi were broken, and he took 2 shields from his servants and brought them to Simeon and Levi. And Simeon, Levi, and Judah on that day fought all 3 against the 11 mighty men, until the time of sunset, but they could not prevail over them. And this was told unto Jacob, and he was sorely grieved, and he prayed unto the Lord, and he and Naphtali his son went against these mighty men. And Jacob approached and drew his bow, and came nigh unto the mighty men, and slew 3 of their men with the bow, and the remaining 8 turned back. Behold, the war waged against them in the front and rear, and they were greatly afraid of their lives, and could not stand before the sons of Jacob, and they fled from before them. And in their flight they met Dan and Asher coming toward them, and they suddenly fell upon them, and fought with them, and slew 2 of them. And Judah and his brothers pursued them, and smote the remainder of them, and slew them. And all the sons of Jacob returned and walked about the city, searching if they could find any men. And they found about 20 young men in a cave in the city, and Gad and Asher smote them all, and Dan and Naphtali lighted upon the rest of the men who had fled and escaped from the 2nd tower, and they smote them all. And the sons of Jacob smote all the inhabitants of the city of Sarton, but the women and little ones they left in the city, and did not slay them. And all the inhabitants of the city of Sarton were powerful men. 1 of them would pursue 1,000, and 2 of them would not flee from 10,000 of the rest of men. And the sons of Jacob slew all the inhabitants of the city of Sarton with the edge of the sword, that no man stood up against them, and they left the women in the city. And the sons of Jacob took all the spoil of the city, and captured what they desired, and they took flocks and herds and property from the city. And the sons of Jacob did unto Sarton and its inhabitants as they had done to Shazar and its inhabitants, and they turned and went away. Chapter 39. When the sons of Jacob went from the city of Sarton, they had gone about 200 cubits, when they met the inhabitants of Tapnach, come toward them. For they went out to fight with them, because they had smitten the king of Tapnach and all his men. So all that remained in the city of Tapnach came out to fight with the sons of Jacob, and they thought to retake from them the booty and the spoil which they had captured from Shazar and Sarton. And the rest of the men of Tapnach fought with the sons of Jacob in that place, and the sons of Jacob smote them, and they fled before them. And they pursued them to the city of Arbelan, and they all fell before the sons of Jacob. And the sons of Jacob returned and came to Tapnach to take away the spoil of Tapnach. And when they came to Tapnach, they heard that the people of Arbelan had gone out to meet them, to save the spoil of their brethren. And the sons of Jacob left 10 of their men in Tapnach to plunder the city, and they went out toward the people of Arbelan. And the men of Arbelan went out with their wives to fight with the sons of Jacob, for their wives were experienced in battle, and they went out, about 400 men and women. And all the sons of Jacob shouted with a loud voice, and they all ran toward the inhabitants of Arbelan with a great and tremendous voice. And the inhabitants of Arbelan heard the noise of the shouting of the sons of Jacob, and their roaring like the noise of lions, and like the roaring of the sea and its waves. And the fear and terror possessed their hearts on account of the sons of Jacob, and they were terribly afraid of them. And they retreated and fled before them into the city. And the sons of Jacob pursued them to the gate of the city, and they came upon them in the city. And the sons of Jacob fought with them in the city, and all their women were engaged in slinging against the sons of Jacob, and the combat was very severe amongst them the whole of that day till evening. And the sons of Jacob could not prevail over them, and the sons of Jacob had almost perished in that battle. And the sons of Jacob cried unto the Lord, and greatly gained strength toward evening. And the sons of Jacob smote all the inhabitants of Arbelan by the edge of the sword, men, women, and little ones. and also the remainder of people who fled from Sartan. The sons of Jacob smote them in Arbelon. And the sons of Jacob did unto Arbelon and Tapnach as they had done to Shazar and Sartan. And when the women saw that all their men were dead, they went upon the roofs of the city and smote the sons of Jacob by showering down stones like rain. And the sons of Jacob hastened and came into the city and seized all the women and smote them with the edge of the sword. And the sons of Jacob captured all the spoil and booty, flocks and herds and cattle. And the sons of Jacob did unto Machnamah as they had done to Tapnach, to Shazar, and to Shiloh, and they turned from there and went away. And on the 5th day the sons of Jacob heard that the people of Gash had gathered against them to battle, because that they had slain their king and their captains, for there had been 14 captains in the city of Gash, and the sons of Jacob had slain them all in the first battle. And the sons of Jacob that day girt on their weapons of war, and they marched to battle against the inhabitants of Gash. And in Gash there was a strong and mighty people of the people of the Amorites. And Gash was the strongest and best fortified city of all the cities of the Amorites, and it had 3 walls. And the sons of Jacob came to Gash, and they found the gates of the city locked, and about 500 men standing at the top of the outermost wall. And a people numerous as the sand upon the seashore were in ambush for the sons of Jacob from without the city at the rear thereof. And the sons of Jacob approached to open the gates of the city, and whilst they were drawing nigh, behold, those who were in ambush at the rear of the city came forth from their places, and surrounded the sons of Jacob. And the sons of Jacob were enclosed between the people of Gash, and the battle was both to their front and rear, and all the men that were upon the wall were casting from the wall upon them arrows and stones. And Judah, seeing that the men of Gash were getting too heavy for them, gave a most piercing and tremendous shriek, and all the men of Gash were terrified at the voice of Judah's cry. And men fell from the wall at his powerful shriek. And all those that were from without and within the city were greatly afraid of their lives. And the sons of Jacob still came nigh to break the doors of the city, when the men of Gash threw stones and arrows upon them from the top of the wall, and made them flee from the gate. And the sons of Jacob returned against the men of Gash who were with them from without the city, and they smote them terribly as striking against gourds, and they could not stand against the sons of Jacob, for fright and terror had seized them at the shriek of Judah. And the sons of Jacob slew all those men who were from without the city, and the sons of Jacob still drew nigh to effect an entrance into the city, and to fight under the city walls. But they could not, for all the inhabitants of Gash who remained in the city had surrounded the walls of Gash in every direction, so that the sons of Jacob were unable to approach the city to fight with them. And as the sons of Jacob came nigh to one corner to fight under the wall, the inhabitants of Gash threw arrows and stones upon them like showers of rain, and they fled from under the wall. And the people of Gash who were upon the wall, seeing that the sons of Jacob could not prevail over them from under the wall, reproached the sons of Jacob in these words, saying, What is the matter with you in the battle, that you cannot prevail? Can you then do unto the mighty city of Gash and its inhabitants, as you did to the cities of the Amorites that were not so powerful? Surely to those weak ones amongst us you did those things, and slew them in the entrance of the city, for they had no strength when they were terrified at the sound of your shouting. And will you now then be able to fight in this place? Surely here you will all die, and we will avenge the cause of those cities that you have laid waste. And the inhabitants of Gash greatly reproached the sons of Jacob, and reviled them with their gods, and continued to cast arrows and stones upon them from the wall. And Judah and his brothers heard the words of the inhabitants of Gash, and their anger was greatly roused. And Judah was jealous of his God in this matter, and he called out and said, O Lord, help, send help to help us and our brothers. And he ran at a distance with all his might, with his drawn sword in his hand, and he sprang from the earth, and by dint of his strength mounted the wall, and his sword fell from his hand. And Judah shouted upon the wall, and all the men that were upon the wall were terrified, and some of them fell from the wall into the city and died. And those who were yet upon the wall, when they saw Judah's strength, they were greatly afraid, and fled for their lives into the city for safety. And some were emboldened to fight with Judah upon the wall, and they came nigh to slay him, when they saw there was no sword in Judah's hand. And they thought of casting him from the wall to his brothers, and 20 men of the city came up to assist them. And they surrounded Judah, and they all shouted over him, and approached him with drawn swords, and they terrified Judah. And Judah cried out to his brothers from the wall. And Jacob and his sons drew the bow from under the wall, and smote 3 of them that were on top of the wall. And Judah continued to cry, and he exclaimed, O Lord, help us! O Lord, deliver us! And he cried out with a loud voice upon the wall, and the cry was heard at a great distance. And after this cry he again repeated to shout. And all the men who surrounded Judah on the top of the wall were terrified, and they each threw his sword from his hand at the sound of Judah's shouting and his tremor, and fled. And Judah took the swords which had fallen from their hands, and Judah fought with them, and slew 20 of their men upon the wall. And about 80 men and women still ascended the wall from the city, and they all surrounded Judah. And the Lord impressed the fear of Judah in their hearts, that they were unable to approach him. And Jacob and all who were with him drew the bow from under the wall, and they slew 10 men upon the wall, and they fell below the wall before Jacob and his sons. And the people upon the wall, seeing that 20 of their men had fallen, they still ran toward Judah with drawn swords, but they could not approach him, for they were greatly terrified at Judah's strength. And one of their mighty men, whose name was Arud, approached to strike Judah upon the head with his sword, when Judah hastily put his shield to his head, and the sword hit the shield, and it was split in 2. And this mighty man, after he had struck Judah, ran for his life at the fear of Judah. And his feet slipped upon the wall, and he fell amongst the sons of Jacob who were below the wall. And the sons of Jacob smote him, and slew him. And Judah's head pained him from the blow of the powerful man, and Judah had nearly died from it. And Judah cried out upon the wall, owing to the pain produced by the blow, when Dan heard him, and his anger burned within him. And he also rose up, and went at a distance, and ran, and sprang from the earth, and mounted the wall with his wrath-excited strength. And when Dan came upon the wall near unto Judah, all the men upon the wall fled, who had stood against Judah, and they went up to the second wall. And they threw arrows and stones upon Dan and Judah from the second wall, and endeavored to drive them from the wall. And the arrows and stones struck Dan and Judah, and they had nearly been killed upon the wall. And wherever Dan and Judah fled upon the wall, they were attacked with arrows and stones from the second wall. And Jacob and his sons were still at the entrance of the city below the first wall, and they were not able to draw their bow against the inhabitants of the city, as they could not be seen by them, being upon the second wall. And Dan and Judah, when they could no longer bear the stones and arrows that fell upon them from the second wall, they both sprang upon the second wall near the people of the city. And when the people of the city who were upon the second wall saw that Dan and Judah had come to them upon the second wall, they all cried out and descended below between the walls. And Jacob and his sons heard the noise of the shouting from the people of the city, and they were still at the entrance of the city, and they were anxious about Dan and Judah, who were not seen by them, they being upon the second wall. And Naphtali went up with his wrath-excited might, and sprang upon the first wall to see what caused the noise of shouting which they had heard in the city. And Issachar and Zebulun drew nigh to break the doors of the city, and they opened the gates of the city and came into the city. And Naphtali leaped from the first wall to the second, and came to assist his brothers. And the inhabitants of Gash who were upon the wall, seeing that Naphtali was the third who had come up to assist his brothers, they all fled and descended into the city. And Jacob and his sons and all their young men came into the city to them. And Judah and Dan and Naphtali descended from the wall into the city, and pursued the inhabitants of the city. And Simeon and Levi were from without the city, and knew not that the gate was opened. And they went up from there to the wall, and came down to their brothers into the city. And the inhabitants of the city had all descended into the city, and the sons of Jacob came to them in different directions, and the battle waged against them, from the front and the rear. And the sons of Jacob smote them terribly, and slew about 20,000 of them, men and women. Not one of them could stand up against the sons of Jacob. And the blood flowed plentifully in the city. and it was like a brook of water, and the blood flowed like a brook to the outer part of the city, and reached the desert of Bethchorin. And the people of Bethchorin saw at a distance the blood flowing from the city of Gash, and about 70 men from amongst them ran to see the blood, and they came to the place where the blood was. And they followed the track of the blood, and came to the wall of the city of Gash, and they saw the blood issue from the city, and they heard the voice of crying from the inhabitants of Gash, for it ascended unto heaven, and the blood was continuing to flow abundantly like a brook of water. And all the sons of Jacob were still smiting the inhabitants of Gash, and were engaged in slaying them till evening, about 20,000 men and women. And the people of Chorin said, Surely this is the work of the Hebrews, for they are still carrying on war in all the cities of the Amorites. And those people hastened, and ran to Bethchorin, and each took his weapons of war, and they cried out to all the inhabitants of Bethchorin, who also girt on their weapons of war, to go and fight with the sons of Jacob. And when the sons of Jacob had done smiting the inhabitants of Gash, they walked about the city to strip all the slain, and coming in the innermost part of the city, and farther on, they met 3 very powerful men, and there was no sword in their hand. And the sons of Jacob came up to the place where they were, and the powerful men ran away, and one of them had taken Zebulun, who he saw was a young lad and of short stature, and with his might dashed him to the ground. And Jacob ran to him with his sword, and Jacob smote him below his loins with the sword, and cut him in two, and the body fell upon Zebulun. And the second one approached and seized Jacob to fell him to the ground, and Jacob turned to him and shouted to him, whilst Simeon and Levi ran and smote him on the hips with the sword, and felled him to the ground. And the powerful men rose up from the ground with wrath-excited might, and Judah came to him before he had gained his footing, and struck him upon the head with the sword.